regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting today, October 27th, 2021. It is currently 6:09 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mr. Valencia,
Present.
Mr. Hollinshead, Mr. Lara,
Here.
Mrs. Flores,
Here.
Mrs. Cordero.
Yes, I'm here also. A report out from our closed session on item A, conference with labor negotiators regarding CSEA. Some information was shared. Item B, conference with labor negotiators regarding SMEA. Information was shared. And on item C, discipline student expulsion number 21-01, on a motion made by Mrs. Flores and seconded by myself, Mrs. Cordero, the board approved by a 5-0 vote a stipulated expulsion agreement for student number 21-01. Let's stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We do have our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be November 10th at 6 p.m. And on the following day, November 11th, our schools and district offices will be closed in honor of Veterans Day. Item 4, public comment period for open session. Public comments are intended for members of the public to address the Board of Education on items involving the school district. Such testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each. Per person, subject, 15 minutes total each topic. If an answer to a specific question is requested, the board president will, if appropriate, direct administration to respond in writing. Mr. Ontiveros, do we have any comments on agenda items?
We had one submission for a public comment from John Raymond. And Ryan, is he in the waiting room? Would you allow Mr. Raymond entry, please?
Mr. Raymond, you are up, sir.
Good evening, board members. How are we doing tonight? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we're doing well. Thank you.
Good, thank you. My comment is I would like to make a personal request to board member Valencia. If you give me a call sometime at 559-393-2163, I'd like to talk to him. And I'd appreciate it. And for the record, I'm glad the Dodgers aren't in the World Series. And thanks for your time and have a good night.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
There are no other public comments
Even on non-agenda items?
on non-agenda items, especially about the Dodgers.
Okay. My grandson was very disappointed. Item 4, approval of the agenda as presented. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mrs. Flores, to approve the agenda as presented.
If I could ask to switch items C and D in the action.
I can't. Luke, you're muted.
I'd like to make a request that we switch items C and D in action so that we can move the ESSER plan up ahead.
Okay, under action items, we're going to just switch item D up to C and put C in the D position.
Yes, thank you.
So as so amended. All right. So it has been moved and seconded to approve the amended agenda as presented. And because of some recent legislation, all votes will now be done via roll call. That's so people out there understand that. Yeah.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead? Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mrs. Flores?
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye. Thank you. The agenda has been approved. Consent agenda. Actions proposed for the consent agenda are consistent with adopted policies and approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. They will be acted upon by roll call vote in one motion without discussion unless members of the board request an item's removal from the consent agenda, in which event it will be taken up in the order indicated on the main agenda. Is there,
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
it has been moved by Mr. Hollinshead, seconded by Mrs. Flores to approve the consent agenda as presented. Roll call.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mrs. Flores?
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7, action items. Item A, Resolution 21-05, a resolution recognizing a state of emergency and reauthorizing teleconference meetings pursuant to AB 361. Mr. Ontiveros.
Yes. And so before the board for your consideration is this resolution that would authorize extension of implementation of teleconferencing for an additional 30 days beyond today's date, should the board approve.
Are there any questions or comments regarding this? Is there a motion?
Making a motion that the board would receive and adopt resolution 2105, resolution recognizing the state of emergency and reauthorizing teleconference meetings pursuant to AB 361, to make a finding that the current circumstances meet the requirements of AB 361 and Government Code Section 5495-3, conduct meetings remotely as presented.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mrs. Flores and seconded by Mr. Hollinshead to adopt Resolution 21-05, recognizing a state of emergency and reauthorizing teleconference meetings pursuant to AB 361, to make a finding that the current circumstances meet the requirements of AB 361 and Government Code Section 54953 to conduct meetings remotely. Roll call, please.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mrs. Flores?
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye. Motion carries. Item 7B, Resolution 21-06, intent to comply with the California Voting Rights Act. Mr. Ontiveros?
And again, this resolution is brought forth to initiate the process to comply with CDRA. As has been discussed previously, this has been in conversation in Santa Barbara County Vida and Linda have been at the County School Boards Association meeting. There was a challenge that was issued against a county district back in 2016, and a response written by county council that all districts in the county would pursue compliance with CBRA after the 2020 census findings were in. And so present tonight is Todd Robbins, attorney with Atkins and Edelson lawyer Rudin Romo, who is a very well versed in the processes, and so this resolution will initiate that process. And so I'll turn it over to Todd to provide any relevant background. You're muted, Todd.
Oh, no, I always do that. You'd think after 18 months, right? Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Good evening, everybody. So tonight, what's in front of you is it's a resolution of intent. It is a resolution where the board, if it approves the resolution, will be stating its intent to transition to trustee area elections in time for the 2022 election. What this resolution does is it has the benefit of protecting the district against receiving one of the demand letters that attorneys have been sending to prompt you to transition to trustee area elections. And by doing this, you maintain the most local control over the process, and you also save yourself potential $30,000 attorney's fee penalty that is built into the California Voting Rights Act for attorneys who send those demand letters. If the board approves this, and if we move, if the board moves forward with the process, you're basically looking at a minimum a 4 board meeting cycle. First 2 board meetings in the cycle will be where you would hold public hearings. And I apologize if my internet connection is bad. If you're having trouble hearing me, just let me know.
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing.
You'll have the first 2 okay. All right, I will. Can you hear me okay now? Okay. The first 2 board meetings in the 4 board meeting cycle will be for a public hearing at each of those 2 board meetings, where the community will be asked to provide input. Just a second.
I caught what you were saying, Todd. While you're catching up, the first 2 meetings will convene public hearings, so the board will be asked to provide input into the process.
Can you hear me better now? All right. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So the first 2 board meetings will be those public hearings like Mr. Ontiveros talked about, where the public will be asked to provide input on how those trustee area maps should look, what considerations should be factored in, what neighborhoods should we make sure we keep together, all of those types of things. After those 2 public hearings, we can then draw conceptual trustee area maps. Those conceptual maps will then be available for 24/7 review and comment on your website. And there will be 2 public hearings on those conceptual maps, where the community will be able to provide feedback on the maps to say, hey, you know, this line it splits a neighborhood in a weird way, or, you know, it doesn't factor in certain things. And so the demographers that we'll be working with can make adjustments and then bring those to you. And once the community's had an opportunity to provide that feedback, the final maps just need to be posted 7 days before final action from the board. The board will adopt a trustee area map. It will adopt a trustee resolution initiating the change, finalizing it, and inviting the Santa Barbara County Committee on School District Organization to come to the district, hold a public hearing, and bless your process. And the legislature has actually also streamlined the process. We no longer have to go to the California Department of Education to seek a waiver of a really narrow election requirement that exists in the education code that 100% of the school districts that have gone through this have taken advantage of that waiver. So instead of having to go to CDE for that, we can now get that waiver from the County Committee on School District Organization, so long as they would agree that our transition is in furtherance of the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act. So I'm sure you've been to CSBA and heard these concepts, and your local county meetings you've heard these concepts, and probably some of your neighboring districts have done this as well. So this is something you're probably familiar with. But it's wise to be thinking about insulating the district from a potential demand letter, and so that's what you're being asked to do tonight. And then the process to transition will begin in early 2022. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take them. And if not, it was nice to meet you all, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
Mr. Robbins, can you please recap on the 7 days, after you talked about the 7 days before the final action?
Yeah.
Can you recap what happens prior to that and a little bit after that?
Sure. So you have your two, what we would call post-map public hearings.
Mm-hmm.
You get the conceptual maps. And so let's say at the second post-map public hearing, the community provides some feedback, or you provide some feedback to the demographer. And that requires us to make changes to the maps. We couldn't adopt those changed maps without first posting those changed and revised maps for at least 7 days before that board meeting where you approve the final maps. Logistically, it always works out where the 7-day period works unless a board calls a special meeting. Just given natural board meeting schedules, the 7-day period is never a problem. But I mentioned that because it's a stated requirement in the law that we have to have them available for review and public review for 7 days before final adoption of a map.
Any other questions?
I don't think so. No. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stay on just to hear the vote, and then I'll disconnect.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll make the recommendation that the Board of Education approve Resolution 21-06, Resolution of Intent to Comply with the California Voting Rights Act as presented.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mrs. Flores.
You're muted.
Thank you.
It has been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mrs. Flores, to approve Resolution 21-06, Resolution of Intent to Comply with the California Voting Rights Act. Roll call, please.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Robbins. We look forward to hearing from you at a future date.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Todd.
Good night.
Good night.
And we're moving to item D that we moved up to C, approval of the ESSER 3 expenditure plan. And I believe this is Mrs. Herrick. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm wondering if I could share my screen.
Sorry, Rebecca, it's turned on now.
Oh, thank you, sir. Okay. All right, can you see the presentation? Good, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Ontiveros, cabinet members, and community members in the audience. This evening, I will be reviewing the American Rescue Plan Act Elementary and Secondary Relief Fund Expenditure Plan. As a quick reminder, the American Rescue Plan was signed into law by Congress on March 11, 2021, and has provided and will continue to provide elementary and secondary schools relief funds known as ESSER funds, We have received ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds. This expenditure plan outlines the ESSER 3 funds, and it aligns with the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Accountability Plan, our LCAP plan, and the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant. These funds can be used through the 2023-2024 school year. So there are 3 parts of the expenditure plan. The first section is the summary of planned ESSER expenditures. This section includes the total amount of ESSER 3 funds that we will receive, and it explains how the LEA intends to expend these funds in support of students. LEAs must spend 20% of the funds in support of addressing lost instructional time. You could see the breakdown of how the funds will be used. The second section of the plan is the community engagement section. In this section, we describe the efforts that were made to meaningfully consult with our required community members and the opportunities we provided for public input in the development of the plan. It also includes how the development of the plan was influenced by the community members and how we received their input. The third section of the plan is the actions. This covers 3 parts: strategies for continuous and safe in-person learning, addressing the impact of lost instructional time, and how we will progress monitor each of the actions in the plan. So we're going to first start with strategies for continuous and safe in-person. In this section, there's only one action. The action is 1.0, facilities indoor air quality. In order to reduce the risk of virus transmission and exposure to environmental health hazards and to support student health, we will use ESSER 3 funds to continuously and safely operate all schools by improving indoor air quality. This will be done by the 3 bullets outlined. The majority funds will be used to replace or upgrade heating and air conditioning systems at multiple school sites. As you can see, there are several ways that we'll progress monitor this action. This has also been broken down into phases. Under addressing the impact of lost instructional time, there are 8 actions. Action 2.0 and 2.1 are about expanded learning. Our plan is to increase the classes offered, invite more students, and reduce class size numbers. We will progress monitor 3 times a year using the student NWEA data. Action 2.2 is student opportunities with visual and performing arts. The pandemic decreased visual and performing art opportunities for our students. Therefore, we plan to increase student opportunities by providing additional lessons, repairing and replacing instruments, and purchasing supplemental VEPA supplies. We will progress monitor on an annual basis through feedback, surveys, inventories, and purchases made. Action 2.3 is to increase broadband access in partnership with homeless shelters and other outside youth agencies. We will increase students' access to technology by working with community partners on a long-term plan that will help ensure that all students have broadband access and technology equipment. This support will help decrease the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of students' learning and access. We will access students, this will be monitored of how often students access the equipment during expanded learning times. So action 2.4 is to increase professional learning. And I'm going to share with you some of the examples. First, paraprofessionals who provide direct support to students will receive additional training in best practices for assisting students toward academic success. A preschool through 3rd grade state initiative called P3 will be supported. Professional learning will be provided in order to align these grades and to build shared understanding of practices. And the last example is that will increase interpreter training to assist with parent communication engagement, and health service items. Progress monitoring will be done through surveys and adjustments will be made as needed. Action 2.5 is expanded literacy environments. As you can see, there are many ways we will expand literacy. I want to point out two of these. We will be extending our libraries in partnership with homeless shelters and other outside agencies. We will also increase site Spanish library books by 20%. Progress monitoring will be done in various ways that align with each service being provided. So action 2.6 is to support student transportation services. The pandemic depleted the number of employees that are available to transport students by bus to school, thus affecting many of our students, making it difficult for them to be at school on a daily basis and in a timely manner. At this point in time, we do not have adequate staffing to provide door-to-door transportation. By contracting with local outside agencies within our community, we will be able to provide bus service to student subgroups with a priority for special education students, foster students, and homeless students. We will progress monitor this action by reviewing weekly attendance records. And action 2.7, increase supplemental PE supplies and equipment. We will provide additional district-approved supplemental PE supplies and equipment, and we will progress monitor this by progress monitoring what is purchased on an annual basis. 2.8 is to increase support for students with disabilities. COVID-19 continues to exacerbate opportunity and learning gaps for our students with disabilities. We will provide increased coordinated communication and specially designed instruction from school staff. These supports include increased evidence-based supplemental curriculum, support programs, and related services that address students' social, emotional, and academic needs based on impacts of lost instructional time. We will progress monitor every 4 to 8 weeks, and support will be added or monitored accordingly. This concludes all of the actions within the plan. And so now I'm wondering if you have any questions or thoughts.
And this is a 3-year plan?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And that does include this year.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
That's much easier to understand than actually reading through the documents, which I did.
It is.
It is.
Just send us the PowerPoint next time. Please.
Oh. Any questions or comments? Mr. Valencia?
What I noticed in the document that it's meant to, address the needs of some of our most, some of our most pressing concerns with students. What intentionality was there regarding the social emotional learning for our students? I found, so what's going on in that area?
So I could share with you, and I know Ms. Dutra can as well, but we are increasing our professional learning for social emotional learning. And so that's one thing that we are doing. That was written in the plan, Mr. Valencia, but I didn't use it as an example tonight.
It's also important to understand, and Ms. Herrick reminds us of this all the time, is that all of these different plans have all different actions and services that together is everything that we're doing for kids. And many of these grants, we can't do the same things in one grant as we're doing in another. And so you might see more, and I'll use your example you brought up of SEL, you might see more of that in ESSER funds and less of it in LCAP. I'm making that up. But that's how it works with the plans. So there might not be a lot of something in a plan, but it might be really elevated in another plan because there's a lot of plans.
Yeah, I think that's important to remind us is that this is just one of multiple plans that we have in place, and timelines vary from one plan to the next. And as I've looked at them, the services complement what is already being offered or expand what is already being offered. So I get that. I understand that concept, and I'm actually very happy to see the VAPA component really expanded upon in this particular plan, because I do believe that's very important. Any other comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the ESSER 3 expenditure plan as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. Valencia moved and Mrs. Flores seconded the motion to approve the ESSER 3 expenditure plan. Roll call, please.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero.
Aye. Motion has carried. Thank you, Mrs. Herrick.
Thank you, Rebecca Herrick and Michelle Serratis. Excellent
you,
work
Rebecca.
on a short
Yeah.
timeline. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving to item 7C, approval of the consultant agreement with Barber and Gonzalez LLC. Mr. Ontiveros.
Yeah, presented tonight for the board's consideration is an agreement that it emanates from an MOU that has been signed by SMEA President Jose Segura and myself. Unfortunately, the MOU wasn't signed till over the weekend, but Jose and I had a conversation about putting this on the agenda, because this is really to initiate some collaborative decision-making learning that we will engage in together as partners, with really the intention of improving the relationship between the Teachers Association and management of the district, and furthering the goals and changing the trajectories of the lives of our students on an ongoing basis. It really was generated through the PERB hearing process. We had signed an initial MOU indicating that Jose and I would pursue this together. And so we spent the months of September and October contacting, interviewing, and then ultimately selecting this Barber and Gonzalez LLC to facilitate this joint learning that we'll engage in together for the contract is through the end of the 21-22 school year. But what you'll see in the content is, or when the work is completed, because the intention is to carry into when we reopen negotiations, the option of facilitating negotiations when we begin again in the next negotiation cycle as well. So I want to, although he's not here with me tonight, I want to commend Jose for partnering in the research around this. We have actually scheduled some tentative dates just today to initiate that training to begin with the leadership and negotiation teams of the Teachers Association and the district, and we'll include board members. And then in the ultimate next stages, we'll incorporate in everyone, so every board member will get an opportunity to participate. All leaders on association side and the district side, with the intentionality of this actually kind of becoming the operating system by which we conduct collaborative decision making in all areas. And so this is this independent contractor agreement is presented for the board's approval.
Any questions? make a motion. I move forward with a motion that the Board of Education approve the independent contractor agreement with Barber and Gonzalez LLC as presented.
I'll second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Flores.
Can't hear you.
Thank you. I can hear myself.
Thank you. It has been moved by Mrs. Flores and seconded by Mr. Laura to approve the independent contractor agreement with Barber and Gonzalez LLC as presented. Roll call, please.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollingshead,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
A big aye.
Mrs. Cordero.
A very happy aye. Motion has carried.
Thank you.
That concludes our regular agenda for our special board meeting tonight. Do we have any board reports? And today I would like to start with a very, very special call out to the Libin learners and Mrs. Lathery and whatever classes, students participated. There was a very nice mention of them in yesterday's Santa Maria Times. Students were there along with, I think I saw 2 or 3 adults holding signs at the entrance to the Santa Maria Cemetery to honor Mr. Joe Centeno, whose memorial service was held on Monday, I should say. I think I said yesterday, but it was Monday. I was very surprised to see the students there. And I really wanted to stop and get out and tell them all, thank you so very, very much. And I had no, and still really don't know how that all happened, but their presence was commented on by those as we waited at the gravesite there for everything to begin happening. And there were 2 very nice signs thanking Mr. Centeno for his many, many, many years of community support. And I believe there was something about planting the seeds of being helpful or supporting the community and little packets of sunflower seeds. But the signs were really nice, and I was especially taken with the signature, if you will, on them from the Libin learners. And just, it was extremely powerful. It just struck a strong chord of sentiment, and I cannot thank Mrs. Lathery and her staff and all who might have been involved with that for the extreme thoughtfulness and just how very, very much it really was appreciated. So thank you so much to them.
I think there were some signs in their window too at the school site. Right. When I went by, I saw evidence of nice signs in honor of Joe. So very delightful, and a great way to culminate community helpers in 3rd grade too in the curriculum. A fine send-off. I'll go next. The only thing on my plate was attending El Camino Titan Jogathon. They did a great job. I know they were worried that the students were going to have to swim instead of jog, but all was dry, all was successful. And I know Linda went out, and Bijou, thank you for going out and supporting. It really generates enthusiasm. The kids were excited. Teachers were on the track too, staff. And it was a great job supported by the PE department, Titans aboard. fundraisers for activities, and they give that money right back to the kids too. There's some great prizes for them. They're actually focusing on clothing where they have sweaters or jackets or things like that that they're going to give back as community spirit too. So it was very enjoyable. It was good to be around kids and letting them have some fun. So thank you.
Yes, and it was fun. By late afternoon, it was quite windy, and I got to wave pom-poms, which did not require a great deal of effort because it was so very windy.
We put the weights on the tarps, so I hope they stayed, because those things are beginning to become parachutes.
Yeah, there were a couple of balloons popped, and
well, that's minor and good.
Yeah, but for the most part, everything was still intact, and it was obviously very well supported. So it was a lot of fun.
I wanted to, Rick, we were trying at a very last minute effort, and I appreciate Mr. Ontiveros and Mr. Reiki trying to get the Alvin elementary parents who are graduating in their PK ceremony this evening. And I wanted to commend those parents, so 82 parents that are graduating or had graduated tonight in that ceremony. Mrs. Hamilton had sent us out that information.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think it's, those are kind of some of the meaningful things that we're trying to do outside of the classroom. There's a lot that's expected of school districts now, and that may not be necessarily in the purview. So that's an exemplary thing, and I think we've been really trying to do more and more of that. And it's really great to see that come to fruition. Ricardo and I have, he's been involved at Santa Maria High with the PK graduations and PK, and I've gone to those at Santa Maria High, and they're all 82 of these parents, I'm sure, were very proud of their accomplishment, and I just want to express gratitude to the folks who did that with them, and for their perseverance. I thought that was really great, and I appreciate Mrs. Hamilton sending that along to us. She's been really good about that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it was nice to get the invitation also. I'm
right.
sorry we had double bookings on that night.
And then, like you said, John, that's a great program, because I went through it at Pioneer when it was started up there, and it's a really proud moment for the parents to be thought of and aware of, and being included in what's going on in their children's academics. I think it's really good. Awesome.
So congratulations, Alvin.
Yeah, definitely the PK program is doing outstanding work. So I want to also congratulate those families. And I also want to thank the district staff that's involved with organizing the LCAP meetings, because I've been able to attend those meetings over the last couple of months. So major props to Ms. Duran and all the team that work on it. One of the issue areas that some of the parents brought up that I think are really important to pay attention to is one of the parents brought up a concern. She described one of our school sites as looking abandoned. And so I'm assuming that she was referring to kind of like the cleanliness, if you will, of a facility. I don't recall which school site she was referring to, but it's just something that I definitely want to make, our staff aware of, right? Because obviously we want our school sites to be, as well kept as possible. And I know in this environment, with staffing shortages or absences, sometimes that can be a challenge, but just something that I wanted to put on everyone's radar, that a parent did raise concern around that. And so I'm hoping that we can look into that. And a separate parent brought up at the LCAP meeting a concern around, the word she used was amabilidad, which I interpret, it's a Spanish word in Spanish, referring to like the welcoming nature or lack thereof that some parents feel when they're at some of our school sites. And so something that I also want to put on the radar of all of our schools, because I know that our schools make a lot of effort to make our parents feel welcome, but for whatever reason, not all parents are feeling that way. So I'm wondering if we can, look into that a little bit further to make sure that when each and every one of our parents show up at our school staff, at our schools, that we're putting our best foot forward to make them feel welcome, so that they can feel like they can participate in our schools, participate in things like PK, because I think that makes a big difference in the school culture. So, and I also just want to wrap up by thanking all the staff. I know that October is a really tough month in the education world. It's, you know, a long month and the weather's changing. So, you know, I get it. I'm in the classroom with myself. You know, students are anxious and ready for a break as well. So I ask that you all hang in there. Please take care of yourselves. Take advantage of all the resources and benefits that all of our, many of our employees have, whether it's visiting the doctor when you need to, taking advantage of therapy services when you need to. So let's definitely be mindful of our self-care and community care so that we could have a great school year. So thank you all very much.
I did want to mention I was able to visit one of the testing centers on campus, and I was able to watch an actual going on of 3 families coming in and being tested, and just the positiveness that went on, and the courtesy and respect that they gave the parents as they were moving them through. And this was out in an outside area because they're waiting for their little shed thing to come so they have a place to be. But they were on it. They were really on it. And it was very exciting to see, especially the 2 families that I saw had negative tests and they were on their way back to school. So that's how quick this was going on with parents in tow. So kudos to the whole group of people that are supporting us in this district in that way. It's very, very important.
Thank you. Mr. Ontiveros.
I just want to thank Mrs. Herrick for all the work she's doing to align the many plans that you referenced, Mrs. Cordero, because over the last couple of years, you know, we built our meeting schedules and our planning schedules just around LCAP, and it's grown, you know, leaps and bounds as a result of the pandemic. And to really make sure that those plans leverage and augment each other is huge work. So kudos to her, but the whole instructional services division for really coming together, working around those elements to try and continue that shift. You know, and the HR staff for responding to those needs in this challenging time. I'm a member of the board of directors of Chamber of Commerce, and we had a meeting last week, and the common theme, regardless of industry, is we need more folks. Right, and so it becomes a challenging situation. To your point, Mr. Valencia, about the long runs in October, we have a professional learning day scheduled for Monday for staff that is primarily built around community building. We've been working with principals over the last few weeks to really hone in on the SEL component for staff members as well, because there's the reality is the more things grow, the more pressure it puts on our system. So testing is one of those big release points. I appreciate you commenting on that, Ms. Flores, because kudos to Matt and the whole team and our healthcare partners. How many tests have been administered since September 27th, Matt? I know because he never gets off of their dashboard.
2,522 people have been tested, a total of 5,797 tests, those folks.
Wow.
And to his credit, Mr. Beecher has been communicating with employees around the clock to ensure that we're complying with the public health order that all employees either be vaccinated or tested. The on-site testing has really enabled us to hone in on that. There are folks out there still that we're tracking down, but lots more folks that are vaccinated, many that are testing on a regular basis. And it's a cycle that just gets tighter when it's a week at a time, and we're a big district. And so our partners from Pipeline and Inspire and Heal 360 are key to that, have been very responsive, and are helping us make that turn into what we, you know, is now the new normal, right? The in-school mask mandate was extended by the Department of Public Health last week. It was set originally to expire on November 1st. I want to ensure that we're maintaining vigilance on all the many aspects. There's a request to approve the Pfizer vaccine for ages 5 through 11. We anticipate that that will come in the next few weeks. I was on an AXA webinar today. There is not an expectation that that requirement for vaccination for students will occur prior to July 1st, which is a thankful decision, because there's been a lot of things coming all at one time. And so to be able to pace that one out and to have the partners in that we have, we've been working not only through our partners with HEAL, but the Department of Public Health to get prepared so that when there is a time that we can extend the vaccination opportunity as well. Matt and I met with the Boys and Girls Club a couple weeks ago. They are going to initiate a vaccine clinic at the Boys and Girls Club. We have offered to publicize that because we're all one community, right? And it's going to take all of us to ensure that we work together to get through, you know, what is the situation that is for the foreseeable future. Mr. Valencia.
Luke, were you going to also update us on how it went, the presentation regarding the state of education for African American students? Was that something that you were going to let us know about today or at a future board meeting? Because I wanted to participate in that, but I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, I participated as a panelist. There will be a written report that will be coming from the entities that put that together. So it wasn't really I just participated. And so once we get the information, I'll be happy to forward that. And then finally, I have something that I'd like to share. You know, when my initial 3-year contract as superintendent in Santa Maria Bonita expired in June of 2019, I renewed my contract for only 2 years. When the board approved that contract in July of 2019, it was my intention at that time to retire at the end of the 2020-2021 school year. However, as with virtually every plan over the past 20 months, COVID intervened. So I informed the board last spring that I would continue beyond July 1st as we traversed the reopening of school, established a response to the independent study requirement, initiated COVID testing for employees and students, et cetera, et cetera. And just so that everyone's aware, the Education Code section 35031 does allow for the term of an existing expired contract to continue if the contract has not been renewed. So as we've crossed the threshold of the new year and adapted to the new normal as a result of the combined efforts of the entire SMBSD community, staff, students, and families, I have informed the board that my last day as superintendent will be December 31st, 2021. At the November 10th, 2021 meeting, the SMBSD Board of Trustees, meeting of the Board of Trustees, a consultant agreement with Leadership Associates will be presented for approval to initiate the transition process for the selection of the next superintendent. The timing of this announcement will enable SMBSD ample time to engage in the process and provide a head start in relation to other districts that will be seeking a superintendent in the spring. During the transition, the board will appoint Deputy Superintendent of Business Services, Matthew Beecher, as SMBSD's interim superintendent. I want to acknowledge and commend the entire SMBSD community for its collective commitment to positively impact the trajectories of the futures of all students. More important and impressive is the resolve and resiliency that has been demonstrated by everyone over the past 20 months in response to the challenges brought forth by COVID. And it provides an example that working together, we can accomplish great things. Thank you for your commitment to our students, our community, and each other. And that concludes my comments.
Obviously, we have had some time to do some behind the scenes discussion and planning for this event. And under normal circumstances, we would simply shake hands and have a big party and celebrate, you know, what has been accomplished, and, you know, look toward continuing the efforts to continuous improvement on which we are a steady path and which we firmly support. We knowing, what Mr. Ontiveros's wishes were, we were holding out a little bit of hope that, the circumstances would extend through the entire year. But we feel that we have a plan in place at this point, and we'll have some discussion regarding that at our next board meeting. In the interim time, between now and the end of December, we do want to show our appreciation for having maintained a very stringent focus on all of the qualities and our desired outcomes that we enumerated in the job description, and commend you for the efforts toward not necessarily accomplishing everything, but setting the direction so that we are working toward accomplishing them. As we realize that there is no end point in our efforts to achieve all that we want to ensure student success. It is always going to be a pathway of continuous improvement, and we certainly appreciate your leadership efforts in that very direction. So on that note.
Thank you. I had a great mentor when I worked in Ontario Montclair, was a board member, Bob Hardy, who had been grown up in Ontario, been a teacher, an administrator, and a board member until about the age of 88. And I drove him to his last board meeting, and I said, it was the 125th anniversary of the district. And I said, Bob, you've been here for half of the district's life. And he took a bite of his pie, took a swallow of coffee, and said, we're all part-timers.
Yeah.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you very much. And welcome, Matt. Appreciate your efforts to come.
Yes. And on that note, we are adjourned.